Hey everyone, welcome to the Kosher Intuitive. It is your hostess, your very favorite clairvoyant, intuitive, energy healer, and life coach. If it's relevant, Detroit investment realtor. And of course, most important, the supreme grand wizard of the Jewish Illuminati. It is me, Elle Meisels. How the heck are you? Hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday. So this was a topic that I decided I would ask the people who follow me what they wanted the next show topic to be about. I offered vampires and being single over 40. And some people wanted vampires, and I am going to talk about vampires, and I think I'm going to do that closer towards the fall, which is only in a couple of weeks. So we're going to have a vampire show. But I got private requests from people who follow me that wanted me to talk about being single after 40. What that feels like, what that means. With it to me anyway, and how do we hold on to hope? Especially living in an Orthodox Jewish community. Though be it I am a modern Orthodox Jewish person, I am still Orthodox. What does that mean for us? How does that? What does life look like? Being this age and unwed in our society where so much emphasis is put on marriage and family and the family unit. And what does that mean for someone like myself, who was married twice? My most recent divorce in October will be 14 years ago. So I haven't been married in a minute. Not for lack of trying, it just didn't happen. And where does that leave us in life, right? What do we do? Well, I can only speak for myself and for the cases that I've worked on in my lifetime, as an energy healer and life coach, and starting out as a dating coach and segueing into life coaching. I find that a lot of single people, especially at my age, are given a lot of, I don't know if it's bad advice, but I feel like it's unrealistic. I feel like some of the advice that we're given, especially by older friends of ours who are married and have been married, there's this concept that if you're single, you just have to love yourself more. Listen, I've got plenty of self-love, all right? I think I'm the bee's knees. I think I'm an amazing person, all right? My being single isn't because I lack self-love. For whatever reason, right, God decided that it's just hasn't been time yet for me to have the marriage that I pray for, right? Whatever time that will come, God willing, soon. But I look at the things that I have done. Now, these are things that are meant something to me. I'm not saying they should mean something to you. But this is just kind of what I've done rather than fixate on not having found a spouse. As some of you know, I work a whole lot. I do, as you know, in clairvoyant, intuitive energy healing and life coaching. I study for this. I study, quite a bit. I meditate quite a bit. And what I wonder sometimes is all the knowledge and information I have. I know if I had married somebody or had gotten married, I could not have the knowledge I have because the time to learn it just would not have been there. And makes me wonder, was that my purpose? Is this, whatever the case may be, because I would have rather have been spending that time with a spouse. But this is how I've dealt with that. I built a community for the gifted, a support group called the Jewish Illuminati. I built my business, and hopefully we're not even as high as we can go. Please God, the business is always growing. I decided to put out a podcast. I really had to find ways to fill the lonely, because that's what we have to do. We have to find ways to fill that gap that other people have a spouse filling. We don't, we don't have that support. I mean, with my arrangements with my ex-husband, he's not involved at all. He doesn't even pay child support. So I don't have anybody co-parenting with me. And, you just kind of get to the point where you work on acceptance of what it is rather than living. Listen, I feel like there's a difference between having hope and living in it. All right. Now, I think there's a fine line between where that becomes unhealthy, where people are fixated on what it's going to be like. Listen, I was one of those people that used to think it was coming much sooner in life than it did. I remember 8-9 years ago, I would say things like, when I get married again, when I get married again, when I get married again. And then as the years prattled on, and now we're approaching year 14 post-divorce, you don't talk like that very much, and it's not that you don't want it. It's just you have to kind of respect the fact that it hasn't happened. And when people talk to you about it, I was spoken to by someone who cares about me recently. And I know that that's not a negative thing at all. But I had to really explain to this person in my life that I am not single because I did not want to get married. I am single because the right person thus far to date has never come. And there have been times in my life where I thought for sure I had met the right person and been wrong. And they send me a beautiful breakup, Megillah. How great I am as they're bouncing out the door. That's been what's happened to me. My breakups usually aren't involved in fighting and all sorts of business. It's usually somebody comes to the rational decision that, this isn't going to work for this and this and this reason. Right. And I did have someone waste 3 years of my life, with false promises and all sorts of bullshit. I was dating a gentleman who was 10 years older than me, lived in Mexico City. Such a shame. Such a shame. So much potential there. But at the end of the day, this gentleman was looking for a roommate, not a wife. And had just been single for so long that even though he is infiltrated in the Orthodox religious community, where you would know that marriage is not a roommate situation, because he had lived for so long with roommates and housemates and things of that nature, it was just like ingrained in this person's psyche that everybody pays their spot, which is fine to a point. But when you're getting married and you want to have kids, which was the case between he and I, you can't treat a wife as a roommate. Also, a Jewish marriage doesn't, if it's being done the right way, we're not talking this yeshiva shit where women are working at the mill while these boys sit and twiddle their thumbs in a yeshiva. No. We're not talking about that horse shit. We're talking in a traditional Jewish family, women are supposed to be cared for by the man they marry. That is not my opinion. That's actuality. That's what marriage is supposed to be about. There's real merit to that, And when, you have standards of what you're going, if there was ever somebody I could have settled for, and it would have been someone I dated about 6 years ago. Nicest guy in the world. We just weren't in love. And if that wasn't an issue, I probably could have married him and been blissfully happy if I were looking for a roommate. But when you're not looking for a roommate, you have to be very, very realistic in what your needs are. I go in basically because in a shidduch situation, which I, believe it or not, I do hold value to shidduch dating. I do. I think that two people making an intelligent decision on what they're looking for in a spouse is the right way to do it. All right? I'm very much in favor of that. Very, very much in favor of that. Where your courtship, the first few dates, are not so butterflies and kisses because you're focused on tactless. You're focused on topics with a point. What kind of person are you? What kind of person am I? And do we have a likelihood of building something? And if the answer to that is no, then you have nothing to resolve at that point. You have nothing to continue on with. So I recently met a gentleman out in Paris from one of the swipe sites, obviously a Jewish person. And can we just put one thing to bed? People have actually asked me if I would date someone not Jewish. Why? Do I hate Shalom? Do I hate peace in my house? How am I going to date let's say, there weren't huge religious differences, which there are. I'm just, as much as I respect your right and reason to have a Merry Christmas, I don't want one. I don't want it in my house. There would be too much conflict in basic living for it to be acceptable for me. All right. So no. And it's not because of racism. It's not because they're not good men. In fact, many people have argued, that in a lot of cases, some of the non-Jewish men are nicer than the Jewish men. It depends on which community, obviously. But I've heard that. And I've also know that the Jewish community has lost several Jewish women to non-Jewish men because of the way they treat women. So put that in your head. Okay? No, I do not date non-Jews. But I also don't casually date either. So that pretty much rules me out of sites like Bumble, JDate, Match.com. These sites are not going to work for me. The site that I've had the most success on, and it's not been what to brag about, was JSwipe. But I recently met a gentleman out in Paris, Jewish guy, obviously. Great. We had a nice conversation going. Now, I don't like it when someone wants it brand new in my sphere, wants to watch my podcast. Why? You're not here to watch me as an entertainer. You're here to get to know me as a partner. And I went against my better judgment, and I should have said I'd rather get to know you a little bit more before you see that I hold some extreme views. That if I don't have a floor to clarify what I mean, you could jump to some serious conclusions, which is what happened, by the way, and said no, thank you. But my point in bringing this up is that correlation between when we had met and opening the conversation and concluding the conversation, we're talking a matter of less than a week. And that is really the way, if you're not interested in somebody, that's the way it should be. You really can't and shouldn't drag something out, especially when all right, when it's not going to go anywhere. So for me to date someone not Jewish would be a complete waste of my time and having no value for their time, which I'm not cool with. That's obviously not how I roll. But I find that being single at this age has given me a lot of perspective. I take very good care of myself. I feel like rather than live in forlorn, I've tried to bring as much joy into my life as I possibly can. I've raised my IQ through the roof because I do IQ raising puzzles for fun. Like some people do Sudoku. I do like IQ raising puzzles. Yeah. Load of laughs over here. Right. But I realize the one thing I'm super thrilled about is that I've never compromised on. And that's being my authentic self. I got to tell you, when I was trying to be somebody else 20 years ago, when I was trying to pass for a Beis Yaakov girl 20 years ago, it didn't buy me anything better. It didn't get me further. In fact, it pulled me, it in a lot of ways, it hindered my growth in a lot of ways. It did. Since I've let go to some of that rigidness, and I shouldn't say some, since I've gotten rid of a lot of that rigidness, I feel like I've elevated a lot as a person, and I've learned phenomenal things about myself. And I'm thankful that I've been my authentic self, because when I wasn't my authentic self, I didn't find myself in a successful marriage twice. Get me? I can't be something I'm not. And, someone who wants to be with me is going to have to understand this is a person who's studied the paranormal, human phenomena, supernatural, the physics of the parascience realm for 30 plus years. And I am an expert in a lot of these topics. And this is what I have done in character building and what I have done with my life, rather than being someone's wife, which I so desperately wanted to be for so many years. And it just hasn't happened yet. I'm not saying it never will, but chas v'shalom, if it doesn't, at least I can honestly say I've always presented my authentic self. And I think, especially if you're 40, you're over 35 and still single, be your authentic self. Because being someone you're not isn't going to land you in a relationship that's going to last forever. And even though, and I'll be the first to admit, I have not succeeded at finding true love at this point in life. I have not succeeded at finding my partner as of right now. I can honestly tell you, the people I have looked into over the last 13, almost 14 years of being single have all been people I would be proud to be with. For real. No losers. Not one loser made it in. Maybe someone a little bit arrogant here and there. Maybe someone was a little bit of snob here and there. But to say someone was a loser or a dirtbag, no. Nope. I don't date people like that. And when you have standards, even when you're single, and you're dating within those standards, this is likely going to be the outcome you have when it doesn't work out. Two consenting, mature, responsible adults having an intelligent conversation about how they feel and coming to the mutual understood conclusion that there is, room to move forward, God willing, if it's the right person, or if it's not the right person, to move away. This is the way you're supposed to be breaking up with people. If you're breaking up with people screaming and yelling and flailing and throwing things and calling their mother and their sister and all this horse shit that men and women do, right? And then they film each other. Like, what the fuck? I am not gonna live that way with nobody. No way. Motherfucker, if I'm in a position that I feel like I need to video your tantrum, we're done. We wouldn't get to that point. You understand? I wouldn't even allow it to get there because I don't live under that narrative. I don't live like that. I would not live in that amount of chaos. I wouldn't. I would never live with someone in chaos. Never, ever. Never again. And I'm speaking from real life experience. My first marriage, I can honestly tell you, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say the guy was a saint. He wasn't. He was a little bit of an asshole. Really. He was a Shiva Bacher, obsessed with his parents, was really not ready to be a kid outside of his parents' house. Really not, because he could not handle any husband responsibilities of any kind. And he was a little bit of he was a shitty about it. And I got tired of dealing with mommy and daddy's baby. I said, fuck that. Bye, Felipe. Bye, Felipe. Sayonara. Shalom. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye. So my next marriage, that was a shitstorm. And I can honestly tell you, I had to go through, coming out of that marriage, serious personal growth in taking accountability, holding myself responsible for the choices I made. You have to understand something. In my practice, the Kosher Intuitive, Lord knows, if you are coming into this business to talk about why God victimized you, you are in the wrong establishment. Lord knows. I am never gonna give someone the floor to God did this to me behavior. It's not how it works. Listen, I could easily look at my entire second marriage with Usher and Zephaniah's father. A mock Shemot that motherfucker. May he fall off the planet or just vanish, or may a hole open in the earth and eat him alive, or fire just fly from the sky and kill him dead. Whatever. If someone would, assassinate their father, I'm not saying you should, but it's not that you shouldn't. Anyway, moving on. So, if the base of Mikdash were standing, to be fair to my argument, he'd be the type of person you can kill. All right? I'm just saying. Moving on. I had to take complete ownership of the fact that I was raised in chaos growing up. I was raised by a narcissistic sociopath who was the victim of all kinds of abuse that made her a narcissistic sociopath that had no business ever having a baby. Whoever allowed my biological mother to have a child, shame the hell on you. All right? That woman, and what pisses me off is when people who knew my deceased mom, I hate calling her that, my mom. I hate using the word mom in relation to that woman, because especially Al Pi Halachat, according to Jewish law, she's not my mother. But that woman had so much wrong with her. And when people say to me after the fact, now years that this woman's finally dead, when she brought a baby home, no one was happy about it. There were concerns, then you handled it the wrong way, because that woman had no business ever raising anybody. And a lot of damage was done. And I had to basically say, okay, because I was raised in a broken environment and I understood understood broken as normality, which it's not, I then gravitated to two broken people to try to recreate the broken life that I was running from. This is not about God at that point. This is about a person who was raised in chaos and at a time in their life, speaking myself, did not know how to free myself of that chaos. And until I was able, after my divorce from their father, I sat down with a therapist. Her name was Victoria, and we accomplished a lot. Because for my first session with Victoria, I said, Victoria, I have been in therapy since I am 5 years old. I am 28 today. How the hell did this happen? And what can I do to have something like this never happen to me again? I said, what is therapy for? And we really got into the crux of what therapy was for. And I'll tell you what, in the years that I had therapy thrown at me because I had a psychopath mother who just wanted a pill to make, me to take a pill to make her love her kid. Crazy. When you go to therapy and get the help on your own accord, ready to take ownership of your mistakes, you have an incredibly different and very healing experience. Because I had to realize and learn my learned behaviors as a child were killing me, chas v'shalom, as an adult. And when you become a person who transforms your life from a bullshit environment to a space where no bullshit can reign, believe me, it's going to greatly hinder what kind of person you're going to attract. You're going to attract a good person. It might not be the right person today, but it's going to be you're on the right path. I know everybody I've dated since my divorce has been a better fit for me and more thought through than either ex-husband. For real. Either ex-husband. Because I made the conscious choice to fix myself. And when I see abusive, narcissistic, sociopathic, psychopathic tendencies in people, and just by the way, not everybody who's a narcissist is a killer. Not everybody who's a sociopath is a murderer. Not everybody who's a psychopath is fucking crazy. We just don't, not everybody who has these character traits are necessarily dangerous, although they are hard to deal with. They are not necessarily dangerous. It's just, unfortunately, serial killers and the like usually fall under that umbrella. Anyway, but I'm just saying, when you educate yourself and you learn that whatever situation God puts you in, instead of saying, shame on you, Lord, you think of, what's the smartest and most intelligent and correct way to work within the struggle where we're coming out of struggle victorious. Because when I got divorced at 28 years old for the second time, I was going to see anybody in hell, and still will, before I stand under a chuppah for the third and final time and make a mistake. It won't happen. It won't happen. And it hasn't happened. Because we have to stay true to ourselves. We have to stay true to our standards. Listen, I'm going to be honest. There's been people, one was 11 years ago, the love of almost 11. Thanksgiving, it'll be 11 years. I met the love of my life. Love of my whole life. And when it ended, it was worse than any divorce I'd ever been through. It was like losing a limb. I don't know, like an emotional limb. I don't know what else to say. I thought for sure this was my soulmate. And I'll tell you what, haven't loved anybody like that since. Nope. Not saying I can't, just saying it hasn't happened yet. But at least I have a healthy example of what it looks like. You know, people have asked me over the years in pertaining to this gentleman, you know, would you ever try to get back? Listen, I tried. There was a time that I tried. No reply. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know when someone has nothing to say, they have nothing to say. That's what they mean. They don't want to talk to you. They have nothing to say. So there went that idea. But at least I can honestly, being true to myself, know that was the person who was good enough to say a loss occurred. When I look at my first two marriages, neither one of those people were good enough to say a loss occurred. They were no loss. Getting rid of those people was a blessing. My ex-husband, I hope, will miraculously, the Usher's Vanya's father, just combust into flames. He's such an evil person. When the Beis Hamikdash stands, we'll get to kill him. So there you go. Something to look forward to. But we have to live within our highest and best self to the best of our ability, as much as we can. As hard as it is, as difficult as things can be, as sad as they can become, we have to remember there is a greater plan and a greater understanding. And when you're looking for something rare might not always be easy to find. And that sucks. It hurts. And I'm not even going to sit here and say that there's not days that I listen to Joni Mitchell and cry my eyes out about being single at 42. I do. It's happened. Of course it has. But at least I know I am not crying over a mistake. Being lonely and crying over a mistake, I'd rather be lonely. I'd rather not go through both, but I'd rather be lonely rather than cry over someone who was a mistake. And I'll tell you the truth. If I don't see a reason that myself and someone would get along in a relationship, I don't lead you on for a second. I'm not going to let you think for a minute you have a chance. Nope. I'm not a flirt. Not at all. I'm not overly romantic. Not at all. I am very much, I very, very, very much keep my emotions in check. Very, very much. Do not wear my heart on my sleeve. Do not fall in love every 5 minutes. No. I believe that adult, marital, tangible, family building love is not just a butterfly infatuation. It has to be built on in commonality and how two people think. And if it isn't, you're never going to be successful. And this is a narrative that I've seen be successful in my life, even though today I am still single. Who knows? Who knows what God has in store for me? I hope to God that my Zivug Rishon is right around the corner, and may he come to me immediately and miraculously at all costs by whatever means necessary. Please, God. I'm just not settling for less than the person that I know was created for me. Not settling for less in any capacity. Because love worth having isn't, and I'm not saying relationships don't bear stress. Every life circumstance can be stressful. But a relationship that's worth having isn't catastrophic. And if you see chaos in your relationship or in your life, get rid of it. Nobody wants it. Certainly not your soulmate. I'm serious. That's your episode of the Kosher Intuitive. We will definitely discuss this again at a later time. And listen, my sincerest prayer for everybody who's married already, may God bless you, shown bias, a financial abundance, love, friendship, unity, shalom. And for those of us who are single, may the Rebbeinu Shalom give you an immediate miraculous healing in your life, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, maritally, financially, sexually, and miraculously in all ways of wellness, and bring you to your Zivug Rishon, myself included, immediately at all costs by whatever means necessary. Please, God. That was your episode of the Kosher Intuitive. Thank you so much for listening. And listen, if this work touches your heart, all right, the Kosher Intuitive is a high-level clairvoyant intuitive energy healing establishment. And I'm a life coach. And yes, I do bring life coaching principles into my sessions. If this cause touches you, please consider giving us your Meiser money. And I will tell you why. We, as a business, myself and the colleagues that I work with, whether you're hiring just me or someone I work with, as whichever, while your initial session is $375 and then $200 an hour, my closest competition is $500 to $1,000 an hour. One is $500, one is $1,000. I'm serious. I have never allowed finances to prevent me from helping somebody. I cannot allow or stand in front of God one day and say, someone didn't have enough money to be healed. What does that say about me? So while, yes, the energy healing services are expensive, I'll be the first one to admit that. At the Kosher Intuitive, nobody that I believe is helpable is turned away because of money. We will find a price that you can afford. Thank you so much for listening. And to book a free consultation, please reach out to me, Yael Meisels, on all socials. Be sure to follow, like, share, subscribe. Have a great day. God bless. And may this be the last year of all of our lives, if we're single, that we're alone. May that miracle occur for all of us, please, God. Take care. Wishing you a wonderful day.